Hi, Angie B here, and I'm standing outside the Theatre Royal in Windsor, where we're about to see a play that arrives here next week called The King's Speech. The King's Speech runs from the 6th to the 10th of August and has matinees on Thursday and Saturday, and I'm about to go in and meet one of the actors who plays King Edward, and that's Paul Cleveland. He's going to have a little chat to me and talk a little bit more about this production. Hi Paul, lovely to chat to you again today. Last time I think we were talking about your role in the musical Cats, but today we're going to have a little chat about something else that you're doing at the moment on tour, which is the play The King's Speech. Tell us a little bit more about The King's Speech, the play, because a lot of us obviously refer to the film. What's The King's Speech about?
It's about a period of history, a fascinating period of history to do with the abdication of Edward VIII and the accession to the throne of George VI, which of course was our current Queen's father, and it involves everything to do around that period with the debate about religion and divorce within the royal family, and also the oncoming of the Second World War and the rise of Hitler and the Third Reich. So it's a huge piece of history, but it's not really that of course is part of the play, but it mainly focuses on a very personal and unknown problem at the time, which was George VI's speech impediment.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, a lot of people refer to and are familiar with the film, but as a play version, when was it first done?
So we believe, from some documentary evidence, that it was drafted to be done as maybe a small fringe production. Mm-hmm. That was the idea. And then that didn't come to a production. It went on to become a film and written as a screenplay. It was put forward to the royal family, and the Queen Mother actually vetoed it being produced as a film until after her death. Mm-hmm. She felt it might evoke some very painful memories for her. So very respectfully they waited until the Queen Mother had passed, and then of course it became the film we all know today, multi-Oscar winning, huge success, and a really fantastic film, which is and isn't the same as the stage play.
Which is more often the case, isn't it? Because to put on a play version of the film, I'm sure, there's only so much you can do. You're limited, aren't you? So how many, is it a small cast, big cast?
I think we're about 7, and obviously we're all playing real historical figures, people who've really, really lived. The fantastic thing about this is it stands alone entirely as a stage theatre production. And it's not a rehashed version of a screenplay mounted on stage. We've had really strong reaction to it from our audiences so far. Very positive, very moved, really inspiring actually, and really made us feel we're part of something very special.
And tell me about the role that you play. What character are you playing?
Okay, so I play David, Prince of Wales, who, upon becoming king, he remained king for about 9 months, he became Edward VIII. And then, to everybody's shock, horror, abdicated from that position, abdicated from the throne for his love of Mrs. Wallis Simpson.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a profound sort of position and story, and an ending for him really, in terms of what he gave up for, and there again you have quite a sort of a love story in the mix, don't you, as well as the leading character problem with his speech impediment. So taking on and doing this role that playing the character that you are, you must have done a lot of research into him and his background.
Yeah, that's the most fascinating thing about playing a real person, is you have the responsibility of getting it right. And although it's not an impersonation, you still have to find out as much as you can about them and look at a lot of documentary footage. In my case, I listened to the abdication speech quite a bit, so I could kind of get an idea of how David spoke. And then documentaries actually before and after the period that it centres around. So you need to know what led them up to the point. You need to know maybe why they did what they did. And then their life after, which is equally as fascinating in his case. It isn't covered in the play. I think there's probably room, and there might even be a play out there that does cover it. We certainly had the television production of Edward and Mrs. Simpson some years ago. But yeah, you owe it to do as much research as possible to try to understand that person.
And I think we were talking earlier on about things that you uncovered that perhaps you didn't know about him. And one of the most interesting things that we were chatting about was how their life, sort of, the later years of their life together and where they ended up living.
Yeah, they were very much the celebrity couple of their day. So they were the posh and becks of their day. They led the most extraordinary life, really based around a huge social aspect, parties and presentations and endlessly. And they were the most beautifully presented couple. It's tinged with sadness in very many ways, though, because if they weren't given a role, they didn't particularly have a royal role to portray. David very much would like to have been involved and had a definite role to play, maybe within the military in some way, which he really, really loved, which he wasn't given. And they sort of, there's some evidence suggests maybe that they, towards the end of their days, maybe weren't quite as fulfilled as they could have been.
And sort of going back to the play and the main character, the actor, who is playing, what's the name of the actor who is playing the main role?
So Chris Casey plays Bertie, who becomes George VI, and we have Paul Lavis playing Lionel Logue, who is the Australian voice coach.
And like the film depicts, have they had to do a lot of vocal exercises and training to obviously portray the speech impediment the way it should be?
Well, certainly from the very second rehearsal started, it was very clear that Chris had done a lot of work on that already, because with it starting out in a repertory situation, the next play was already probably being rehearsed while this one was being performed, so there isn't a lot of time. There's probably 6 days that you get to put the thing on from the minute you walk into rehearsal until you finish the dress run and it's going up for its first performance. So a lot of work's required before from everybody, but it was very apparent that both of them had done a lot of their homework.
Yeah, I mean, it's as an actor, it must be something you can relate to quite strongly when you see in the movie, especially Geoffrey Rush, who's trying to teach, with the vocal exercises and the techniques and everything. It's very similar to an actor, isn't it? Before you warm up and you go on stage, there's lots you have to do to help the voice.
Yes, that's very true. I think every actor has their own way of getting ready. Certainly because this requires you to speak and receive pronunciation, and a particular period of that, which is 1936, so that we don't speak then how we do now. It's very, very different, and there's certain inflections that David, Prince of Wales, used to use that I try to do as well. And it's an ongoing process where you're always trying to better that. I don't think it's you hope that the first performance you give in some ways doesn't bear a lot of relation to the final performance you give, because you hope to grow. And the great thing about us doing it in several different venues is, of course, you get longer to keep working at it.
And small cast, but obviously a lot of scene changes, something that you have to do quite sleekly in a small production to sort of set the scene, set the mood. Do you have a good backstage crew, or is that something that the cast are involved with?
No, we don't have that, because coming as it began in Rep, down in Sidmouth, we don't have anything like that, so we're doing all of that ourselves as well. So if you're playing a small role, there isn't a case of you're sitting in a dressing room waiting for ages to go on, or when you've been on waiting for the end of the show to come around. You still are doing things. So we're doing small set changes, setting furniture, doing costume changes, and it's a very committed ensemble, the company. Everybody's looking after each other and supporting each other, and there's a great deal of focus and discipline that was naturally there from day one.
And I think that's the beauty of Theatre Rep, isn't it? That you as an audience have a completely different experience. It's a much more emotional journey. You're with the actors from the beginning to the end. What would you say, is there one particular scene or one particular emotional scene or moment in the play that really hits home with you?
Well, my character is very much the villain of the piece, so I don't have a particularly emotional moment, although maybe a couple of times he gets a little bit hysterical. But the real emotion comes obviously in the journey of the two main characters, in Lionel and Bertie, and they go through many, many different ups and downs in their working relationship. And really, I suppose it's the moment really set in Westminster Abbey towards the end of the piece, prior to Bertie's coronation, that Lionel was able to almost deliver a finished product and proclaim that Bertie will be a good king. And throughout the process of learning to deal with a problem like a speech impediment, that he's grown as a man and become a better man from it. And it's an incredibly moving moment, you know, and I think we sort of all realise when we take our bows towards the end, you can really feel the audience has been on a fantastic journey with you. And they really have been. They're a very quiet, concentrated audience normally, and they really do react. It's like all of us are in one on one journey together. By the time it gets to the end, they release how they feel about the piece, and it's really gratifying, and we all feel like, you know, maybe we've told the story correctly.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the greatest testament ever, isn't it, when you hear that audience react, and if you've told a very good story and you've given the emotion and they're with you right to the end, that's you know, job well done, isn't it? I think it's really appropriate, and how apt that it's touring and coming to the Theatre Royal in Windsor, which resides dead opposite the Windsor Castle, which, you know, you were briefly explaining to me earlier on a lot of the research or things that were restored or brought to were in the archives of Windsor Castle. So how appropriate that you should play in Windsor.
I know, it's great, isn't it? We could be in a venue that's got nothing to do with the subject matter at all and have to bring that. But of course, at this particular venue, as you enter the theatre and leave at the end, Windsor Castle is literally across the road from you. And I suppose maybe what better place to see it in than this particular venue, because if it so takes your fancy, you could tour Windsor Castle by day and see the show in the evening, or indeed one of our two matinees that we're playing. And also within the grounds of Windsor Great Park is Fort Belvedere, which was David's home prior to his abdication. It's where he made his abdication speech, and it's where he longed to return to, but unfortunately due to his exile never did.
Well, I think more reason for anybody who lives near to Windsor to get along and see the play next week. I certainly can't wait to see it. I'm going to come along and see the production. Runs from the 6th to the 12th of August, yeah?
It runs from the 6th to the 10th, so it runs from Tuesday to Saturday, with a matinee at 2:30 on Thursday and a matinee on Saturday at 4:45.
Really look forward to seeing it, and well done to you. I mean, congratulations to you again on being involved with such a great production, and I cannot wait to come along and see it, and all the very best.
Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you there.